Hey there, welcome back to Emotional Mojo. Let's face it and be honest here, there is a huge stigma around mental illness. We all have preconceived notions, but how can we ever better something that we don't actually understand? Well, PAULA KEGELMAN works with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and she is here to spread the word on how we can help those suffering mental illness and their families. PAULA, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
And we were having a really good discussion in the commercial break, and we're going to get to that whole stigma in just a second, but we'd love to talk to you about the organization you work with and what you do with them.
So NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We were founded in 1979. We are the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization. And we are dedicated to improving the lives of those with a mental illness and their families through support, education, and advocacy.
All right, so you guys are doing a lot.
That's amazing.
Where did your inspiration come from?
My son, David.
What happened?
David was cognitive delayed at birth.
Okay.
And in 2005, he started experiencing some bizarre behaviors, and it was right before his 18th birthday. And we weren't sure if it was his mental age versus physical age, just kind of colliding hormones.
Sure.
It turned out a few months later, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
And that is what took me to NAMI. I was given their phone number for the Greater Orlando affiliate. NAMI has affiliates that span across the 50 states. And so NAMI Greater Orlando took me in, if you will, and I enrolled in one of their signature education classes, and it changed everything about our family.
Well, I mean, clearly there's a need for this. I mean, what would you say is the biggest challenge in helping those with mental illness and their families?
Well, getting diagnosis is key, and getting the correct diagnosis early on,
That's huge.
as soon as possible,
Yeah.
is so important. And a lot of these mental illnesses overlap with symptoms, so it is hard at first to get the correct diagnosis. And then helping our loved ones stay on their medications.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is the loved ones who say, I
That's
don't know
right.
what schizophrenia is. How do I deal with this now?
Well, not only that, but it's like a sinus infection. You take your antibiotics, halfway through you feel better, you stop taking your meds.
Correct.
Right.
Our loved ones tend to go through that early on as well when they're diagnosed. And
Well,
so
I've heard you talk about this. There's so few resources. There's not enough NAMI in the world, if you will. But why is that? I mean, what is the problem? Where are we falling through here? The
well,
cracks?
the stigma behind it is, I think, our main problem. What we need to remember about mental illness is that it's a biological brain disorder. No one wakes up one day and decides they want to live with a mental illness.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not the way it works. This is a biological brain disorder. So if we can remember that, we can get past that stigma. And we at NAMI want mental illness to be discussed as openly as cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. We're just not there yet.
Right, and I think that that's part of the issue as well when we talk about correct diagnosing.
Right.
The reality is, at the core of the problem, it may be a chemical imbalance in the brain.
That's right.
And not just a behavioral issue.
Exactly.
So we need to treat the core issue, and that's not happening because of the misdiagnosis.
Well, and I think people will be more willing to accept a diagnosis too if we talk more about it, like you said, if we hear more about it. And, you know, recent news events, let's be frank here, all these shootings, the Santa Barbara shootings, you know, it comes out later that these people are dealing with mental illness, but that only adds to the stigma, because you were giving us some interesting facts in the commercial break.
Well, 1 in 4 families will be affected by mental illness. That's almost 60 million Americans. So 1 in 4. I happen to be
there's
the
4 of
one
us
on
here.
this couch.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you put it in that perspective, it's huge.
And
so
really, these people committing these crimes, you say that's not the norm.
it is not the norm, and we need to remember that statistically, people that have mental illness are not prone to violent acts.
Correct.
It's normally the other way around.
Right.
And so we have to remember that. It's just unfortunate that the only time we hear about it in the news is when there's been a violent act, and unfortunately a mental illness is behind it.
So what are you hoping people out there will do? What's your message for those
Well,
watching?
education is power. We need to educate ourselves, and NAMI has significant resources. I am trained to teach 2 of the signature education programs, and really they completely changed my life and the way that we incorporate our son into our household, the way we communicate with him. It taught us about the illness itself.
Yeah.
So again, education is power. We need to arm ourselves with as much of that as we can, and we will better understand mental illness and be able to help our loved ones.
You are doing great things spreading
Yeah,
the word. So
thank
I want
you
to
for
thank you
sharing it.
for that. And you guys can go to NAMI.org, correct?
Exactly,
That's
yes.
the website. Get some more information, educate yourself, like she said. Thank you so much,
Thank
Paula.
you.
Do you want to join us for a couple of stories
love
now?
to. Thank you.
Check this out. It's definitely a bittersweet story, but it's got a great message. Nearly a year after her death, a 16-year-old girl's dad is sharing his daughter's inspirational message to the world. So Risa Kammerman went through more turbulence in life than most teenagers do. At 14, she tried to take her own life. Her father got her into therapy, which did help. Risa was back with a smiling face, but that sunshine was short-lived, unfortunately. Last year, she died in a car crash. Well, nearly a year after that, her dad ended up finding a very special video. It starts simply with the words, "Life sucks," and it goes on to describe Risa's hardships. She's got the notebook. She describes her mom abandoning her, raising her 4 brothers by herself, even being sexually assaulted 3 times. And she says, "I didn't want to live anymore." But after her therapy, that video takes a turn, saying, "I have a million reasons to live. I love my family." She says, "Forgive. Forgive anyone who has ever hurt you. Forgive that one person who wasn't there when you needed them the most." And most importantly, she ends that video with, "Forgive yourself." So her father, in finding this, he says, at first, I didn't want to watch it. Here's my
Right.
16-year-old in all her angst. This was a hard time in her life, but he watched the whole thing. He saw that message and shared it, and now it's gone viral. What do you
I've
guys
got
think when you see
goosebumps
something
just
like
looking,
this?
Just thinking about how she came full circle in her life and was able to forgive the people who did wrong against her.
Yeah. Yeah.
She had the support of her father as well, who recognized some triggers and got her therapy when she needed it, which
Yeah.
is so important.
And our challenge today is forgiving yourself and forgiving others. I wonder, do you have any advice for anyone out there as far as forgiveness goes? Have you ever had any times in your life when you had to take that challenge on?
Well, sure, I think we all do.
Yeah.
There's just with mental illness, there's so many emotions that go through that. There's grief that you feel for your loved one. There's a sense of loss, and you have to forgive yourself, and we have to not
Dwell on
allow
that.
the illness to define our loved one, and so there's forgiveness for yourself in that situation as
Yeah,
well.
I gotta say, that's the silver lining here is all these people are seeing this message.
Yeah, right.
It's a great thing. Hey, so this is something really interesting, and we'll see if you guys all agree or not with these topics, okay? If you've fallen in love with the perfect person, you'd do anything for them, right? Well, wrong, apparently. Maggie Parker is an author for Women's Health, and she recently published this list of things you should never, ever have to do for love, and it's got a lot of people talking. So, number 10, she says, get a questionable tattoo, because proving your love should not require the use of permanent ink, and I think we all know that trend of people who get the other person's name.
Yeah, don't do it.
And then it ends up falling through. What do you
That's
guys
a
agree
curse.
with that one?
Yes.
Any of you have tattoos of somebody's name?
Nope.
All right. Number 9, always pay the bill. You shouldn't have to do this. She says it's great women feel more comfortable picking up the check, but it doesn't mean you have to support your date every single time you go out. You guys agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just me?
Yeah.
You like to be in control. She likes to, I'm buying tonight. Number 8, you should never have to pretend you don't have certain bodily functions, all right? We know none of that is sexy, but you are allowed to be a human and use the restroom when you need to. Just
Yes.
shut the door is the one thing I say.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's not healthy if you feel like you can't be yourself. Number 7, watch their favorite movie over and over again. You shouldn't have to do that. Dumb and Dumber is only funny the first 20 times. If you switch it up, they should know not loving their favorite movie doesn't mean you don't love them. We've got an entire list of these
Yeah.
things, and you're seeing a few of them more. You shouldn't have to adopt their hobbies, miss your favorite show, ditch your friends. So
I agree.
Yeah, we'll continue this list on our Facebook page, and you guys can chime in and see if you've ever done any of these things. for love.
Absolutely.
Big thank you again to you, Paula.
Thank
Don't
you for
forget,
having me.
NAMI.org is the website. We will be right back. You guys are watching Emotional Mojo.